Hi, this is Joshua Kulp for Daf Shevui. We are learning Masechet Ketubot. We are on Daf Kuf, page 100 of Masechet Ketubot. If you have been following along, congratulations. You are on your 99th page of Masechet Ketubot. That's right. Sorry to say, this is only page 99 because the Gemara started with Daf Bet. So next week we'll learn the 100th Daf of Masechet Ketubot. And I wanted to go over a story here that has some personal resonance for me. Some of you out there know me. You know me as somebody who loves Talmud and teaches Talmud. I've been teaching it all my life. Some of you know me through another passion of mine, and that is running and biking. You might see on my Facebook page. I do a lot of running, biking, swimming sometimes too. My third passion in life is beer. I am an avid beer aficionado, somewhat of a beer snob, and I cannot help but comment on a sugya that has to do with beer in our Gemara. So the sugya is about selling, it's on the bottom of page Kuf Amud Bet, it's about selling the property that was left for Yatomim if it needs to be sold to preserve its value. If it is property, if the father left property that is going to go deteriorate rapidly and needs to be sold in order to maintain its value, then it can be sold immediately. Rav Chisda says it should be sold at the marketplace. Even if it takes longer, it will fetch a higher price. And basically, the Gemara says they don't disagree. The main criteria here is what is in the best interests of the yatomim, of the orphans. Would it be better to sell it immediately before the price deteriorates, or would it fetch a higher price at market even if we have to wait a little bit? And that's exactly what happens with Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana have biyade shichra de Rav Masharshia bar Chikrai Yatma. So Rav Kahana had in his hands beer that belonged to Rav Masharshia, the son of Chilkai, who evidently had just died. And that beer was part of his izavon, his estate that was left after his death, which itself is very interesting, that beer was something they brewed in large quantities and that it would be considered part of his estate, something of value that could be sold and used to provide provisions in the future for the yatomim, for the orphans. Obviously, we're not talking about a few bottles. I didn't have bottles back then, or even probably a barrel of beer, but a large quantity of beer of which it was necessary to have a discussion when was the best time to sell it. And there are many stories about something called shichra, which we sometimes translate as beer, but really what we're talking about is some kind of fermented grain beverage. We should probably realize that it would have tasted very different from the beer that we have today. Hops as a spice for beer do not grow in this region, and I do not believe that they were really used with regularity until quite late in the Middle Ages in Europe. I am a big fan of hops right now, and I could not imagine drinking my beer without a healthy dose of hops, but their beer would have been something entirely different. Nevertheless, it was a common beverage for obvious reasons. It probably tasted better than water. In some places, it was probably a lot cheaper and easier to produce than wine. Specifically in Babylonia, is not known to be a wine-producing country. And of course, if you're used to drinking alcohol and you get used to drinking alcohol, well, we know what happens. You want to maintain that custom of drinking alcohol. You might want to drink more alcohol, which creates all sorts of problems. And he left it over until the festival when more people would be there to buy. And he said, even though it's going to get a little, and this is a difficult word here, itzatzta, it will bring better price. And the truth is, I looked this word up, itzatzta, in the newest dictionary of Jewish Babylonian Aramaic, written about 15 years ago, an amazing magnum opus. But unfortunately, he doesn't know what that word is. Rashi says it's vinegary, which he's really learning from wine. I have spent the past year teaching the sugiot in the end of Avodah Zarah about wine. And wine is especially in Germany and in France, would go bad very quickly. They couldn't preserve it with hermetically sealed vessels because they were using barrels. And so wine's value, despite what we generally think about wine going up in price and aging, their wine deteriorated and needed to be drunk fairly quickly, even within a year, sometimes within a couple months. And it created a lot of halachic problems for them because they didn't have wine later on in the year after the harvest. But beer, probably itzatzta does not mean vinegary. Beer doesn't get vinegary, but it can go sour. If your beer is left over and it continues to ferment and gathers some wild yeasts, those yeasts can go sour, and therefore certain types of beers do not last very long. Today, again, being a beer aficionado, if you have a heavy, highly alcoholic stout, you can probably hold on to that for a very long time. I don't know if it'll get better, but it probably won't get worse. But if you have a fresh, light wheat beer or something hoppy, something that has a strong fragrance, you're better off drinking it quickly. I don't know if it'll get itzatzta. I don't really even know what itzatzta means, but my advice is don't hold on to your beer. Buy it fresh in general, and you will have a happier beer drinking experience. It's a little advice about Talmud and about beer drinking.